Scott here. In xLights 2020.30, I added a new option to the S5 import dialog, and it allows you to do channel and strand mapping. So in this video, I kind of want to go over how to do that and show a demo of it. In xLights here, I have the layout. I think it's Dustin Hayes is his name. He sent his layout to us on GitHub. And in his layout, he has AC trees that he's modeling as 3 separate trees, and I'll show that here in the layout tab. He has 3 trees that are 8 channels of AC, and each string or strand is 1 channel, and he wants to then map his S5 data to these 8 strands, these 3 colors. So as you can see kind of in our sequence here, we have our 3 trees with our 8 strands, or strings are the same on this. It's 1 channel per strand. And historically, so let's just try to we'll do an import here. And in the import, we'll then select, so this is the S5 LOR edit file. And when you do this, it'll come up with a warning saying that S5 import is still very experimental. So if you run any issues with it or need some help with it, please create an issue or send a note to one of us, the developers, and we'll try to improve it as much as we can. So when you first open the LOR edit file, this is the import dialog, and by default, it always adds the timing mark every time, or the timing tracks every time. Like, since it's already in here, I want to uncheck that because we don't need that. So in here, the default kind of mode is the LOR edit files have 2 types of effects. They have the RGB effects, which are the newer xLights style effects, and then it also just has channel level effects. So by default, when you do a mapping here, this will, if the right list here is all of your S5 models that have effects on them. So if you want to map this tree, xLights will then take if it has RGB effects or the channel level effects, and xLights will just kind of automatically map that for you. So the default is just this auto mode where it'll do everything for you. And kind of how the auto works is it'll try to figure out the channels of the new model and the old model and kind of just put them on there. When I was playing with that with this import, it didn't map them just correctly. It kind of assumed it was like the nodes were individual channel data and it didn't map correctly. So let's just delete that. So I made this new mode that I call kind of strands and channel mode, and this is what I'm talking about in the changelog. So when you check this box, it'll change the list on the right here, and instead of having RGB effects and the channel effects, it now just shows the channel effects. And it also shows them kind of in more granularity, like it'll actually show the individual strands. So then now you can map the strands, the effects on each individual strand from your LOR edit file now onto the strands or even node level of your xLights model. And you can as well, like if you wanted to take these node level effects and put them on your RGB tree on the high level, you could also map that. But for this, what I kind of want to show is this is that same AC tree, the 3 colors we have in our sequencer tab. And if you hit the little chevron and expand it, we'll see the 8 strands or the 8 strings. And now on the right side here, we'll see the effects from the LOR file, the S5 file. And it's a little cryptic, the numbering that are in these parentheses here, but this kind of shows the channel and the strand and the color. I'm not 100% sure what the format means. I don't really understand the LOR edit file 100%, but kind of what I can convey from it, I got this working. So the first 0, how the channels are mapped in the file, I believe it maps it basically in a 2D array, and then there's a third dimension, which is for the color. So I think if you had multiple channels on a strand, this first number may increase, but for this one, the first column is always 0. But then the second 0, this is the strand number, and it's a 0-based index. So 0 is the first strand, and if you look down here, 7 is the 8th strand. And the third column is the color of the strands. So since there was 4 color strands here, there's white, red, green, and blue, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3. By default, so when there would be 4 colors, and then I went into the model data and did a lookup to see what those colors should be. If the model doesn't have any colors specified in S5, the end of it here won't say anything. So for some of these channel block type models that don't have colors, it just shows blank, and that basically means in the color data, in the model data, there was no color information. For this tree, if we want to basically map the blue tree to the blue channel data from our S5 file, we would just go through, and so 0, the middle column here, 0 is the first strand. So you want to highlight your xLights model which strand, and then if you double click here, it'll populate that mapping. So we can just go through and populate all the blues. So if you look here, the first strand is 0 because it's a 0 base index. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's all 8 strands of blue. We can do the same for the green. Just highlight the first one, and then we can double click and it'll go down the line here. And lastly, let's do the red as well. So once you're all done with the mapping, what I really recommend you do is you should save your mapping. So if you want to, save this as this is my channel mapping, you could basically make 2 mappings. Like if you wanted one for your RGB mapping, one for your channel mapping, or if you had to do multiple channel mappings, you can just always, save multiple mappings. And then the next time you come in, you could load that mapping so you don't have to do this every time. But so since we did the mapping, now we can just hit OK. And what xLights will do here is it'll import those effects from those strands onto the model in xLights. And what it actually did in the background is it also took the color from the model properties. So if this is going onto a blue tree, so it didn't really matter, but if you map this onto like an RGB tree, it actually would have kept the effects blue. And if the effects itself actually had color, so for like those multicolor string effects in S5, if there's actually a color specified, it will use those colors. And if it's just a channel data with no color, it'll just use a white effect because that's kind of the universal all channels on. So if I do a render all here, after our import, it should render those effects we imported. And if I hit play, you won't hear any audio, but if we just hit play in the model preview here, we should be able to see those effects. So you could see all the strand effects imported there from S5. So that's kind of just the basics. If you want to, after you import that one, if you want to go back in here and do the whole process again, you can always just map other channels. If you want to map, you can do everything at once or kind of do individual channels at a time, and you can just keep importing until you get what you would like. So if you need any help with it, or there's any more like features, or you run into issues with the S5 stuff, I'll gladly add more if needed. So if you need any help, just please let me know. And thanks for watching.